Hey everyone, Eric here. I'm with Kim and with Bailey. We are going to go into full spoilers for Eternals. Once again, full spoilers for Eternals. So if you haven't seen it and you keep watching this video, you're going to hear everything that happens in it. If that's cool with you, great. If not, go watch the movie, then come back and listen to us chat here about it. All right, last warning, 3, 2, 1, full spoiler zone. We are in it. I reviewed this movie a couple weeks ago, which you can check out on this very channel here on YouTube. So I'll lightly talk about my thoughts in a second. But you guys, what did both of you see with Eternals? Kim, I'll start with you because you literally saw it like an hour ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I am fresh from the screening. So overall, I felt that a lot of it was unengaging. There were a lot of fights with monsters that didn't pull me in. The overall kind of it was quite dark, the screen. I don't know if you found that with your screenings, even in daylight scenes. So I felt like that was to obscure the deviance maybe. And then on top of that, I felt there were even more unengaging Dawson's Creek style conversations about the meaning of life, and it was quite maudlin. So there were some things I liked, and I was mostly thankful for Kumail Nanjiani's Kingo and his valet.
Yeah, that was definitely a very fun part of the film, which I think we'll get back to as well. Bailey, I have a feeling I got an idea. We didn't really talk about it, but what are your thoughts on Eternals overall?
Wasn't my favorite Marvel movie. Didn't love it. There were things about it that I enjoyed. I thought everyone in the cast was so good. I think that Gemma Chan deserves to be far more of a household name than she is, at least in the US. Kumail obviously was great. He was so funny in it. But I think it was kind of a mess. It sort of had, my issue with it is sort of the opposite of the reason I liked Shang-Chi, because I loved Shang-Chi because it felt like a small, contained within itself story that was just tangentially related to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I thought that was really great and fresh and exciting. And with Eternals, it also did not feel very related to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it was a huge story. It was way big to a degree that I just found hard to engage with, I think.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've now seen the movie 3 times. I don't want to reiterate everything I said in that review, except to say I went into this movie extremely wary. I hadn't read the reviews yet. The trailers weren't doing it for me. And I was like, this doesn't really click for me, only to enjoy it more than I expected, with the caveat that it's still probably down. It's not at the bottom for me with the MCU movies, but it's certainly low middle. But I did enjoy it. And seeing it again, I was just telling Kim before we started that seeing it again and I saw it again after some very negative reviews came out. I thought, oh, is there something where I was just in a good mood when I saw it? But I still really like it seeing it again, with the caveat that, yeah, there's a lot of problems with this movie. Some of them I think are kind of innate and would have been very hard to overcome, which is just 10 characters that they're introducing at once, and sort of this clunkiness to the fact that, the first half, if not the first 2/3 of the movie, is this sort of long worldwide road trip of getting to know everyone, which I think serves a purpose, but also isn't the best pacing for a movie of now we're going to go to this person and kind of learn their deal. And then we're going to do some flashbacks. So yeah, there are some things about it that I just kind of feel drag a bit, even while I think I was connected to the characters a lot more than I expected to be, and would actually ultimately say that's one of the strengths of the movie. But let's go a little favorite, least favorite here, starting out with, for both you guys, what were things that stood out to you? I mean, you mentioned a little bit, but what were sort of favorite aspects of the film for you?
I mean, for me, my favorite moments were the funny or the idiosyncratic moments, or I know sometimes self-referential moments or meta moments are controversial, but I think they work quite well in this. So I liked the whole Bollywood sequence and Kingo's whole story, where he's been carving out this acting career for himself over the years and has established his own acting dynasty in which he is his own grandfather, father, etc., making some awesome movies that have titles in this film, which I'd like to see get made into real films, as always. And then, you know, the references to like Batman and Superman, I enjoyed those. It just kind of lifted the film a little bit. Every time there was a moment like this, it took me out of this feeling of being bogged down in the maudlin stuff. And I did appreciate that the film tried to kind of bring some warmth and deal with themes like this. But I think because of what you said, with so many characters, Eric, it kind of struggled to make an emotional impact. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so Cersei using the aging app as well on Icarus, that was fun.
Billy, what about for you? What are some of your standout favorite moments of the film?
Yeah, I agree. I think the humor was really helpful. The humor got us through the movie, honestly. Like, and again, everyone in the movie is very well cast. It was great seeing Angelina Jolie on screen again. It was Salma Hayek was great. Everyone was so good in it. I enjoyed the twist, the capital T twist. Mm-hmm. I thought that was great. I did not see it coming. But on the other hand, I would have really loved a little bit more internality of what drove him to the decisions that he made, Icarus, because, you know, they were all subject to the same universe, the same world, the same circumstances. Why was he so devoted to the cause of destroying the world when everyone else wasn't? Like, I would have loved a little bit more of that. And also, much ado was made about the sex scene. I think that was maybe the least sexy sex scene I've ever seen in a movie. It was almost like comically unsexy. I would rather Marvel never acknowledge sex again than do another sex scene. It was so bad.
I thought it was fine, but I also thought that's a lot of sand, guys. Yeah,
everywhere.
Right. I really like the Icarus twist as well. Didn't see it coming. It's funny because a lot of the things in the movie work for me as far as the broad strokes, because again, I've seen some people say maybe this would have been better served as like a Disney Plus miniseries. And I see the point in that with this many characters and this many plot lines, because they have to go for these broad strokes. So I get in its totality that the idea is, you know, Icarus is like the most true believer. And I think the idea is that it's like, he purposely kept himself at a distance from the humans, and he went through the motions of almost pretending to care because Cersei cared. So there's like these ideas there that I think maybe would have been, if we could have gotten a couple more scenes, knowing they couldn't do that in the movie, because then the movie would have gotten even longer and more bogged down. But you kind of feel like these ideas that aren't fully there. But I like the Icarus twist a lot. And I do think a lot of the characters, especially because there are so many, I was impressed with how much they got across in just a few scenes. Like I really like Druig, for instance, which first of all, clever casting by casting like, Barry Keoghan, and it's like, oh, he'll be the traitor. If anyone's a traitor, it's Barry Keoghan. But he's not. He's a guy who kind of, in some ways, he cares the most, except that he's like, I'll just mind control everyone so they won't kill each other. I liked like a little touches like that. Kumail was great. Their back and forth about that I direct to and web content was maybe my favorite exchange in the movie. And I really like the stuff at the end. Yeah, with Icarus and with Sprite. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a sucker for the like the split and them fighting each other when like a group fractures and they take on each other, but I liked all that stuff a lot. But let's talk about least favorite things of the movie. What for you guys, you've talked a bit about it, but what is sort of stands out as like things that really just like that was not either the right call or wasn't done, wasn't executed well?
I mean, I'd say, you talked about the first half, maybe 2/3 of the movie, where it's jumping locations a lot and across time, and it was hard to keep up. And I found myself writing a ton of notes just to keep track of where they were, what was going on. And I don't normally do quite as much heavy note taking as that when it comes to keeping track of the plot. So that was kind of confusing, and broken up, and not great pacing for me. And I think some of the unintentional laughs were there that I picked up. You may not have the same references, but when Ajak was speaking to Arishem, I thought it was like Mork calling Orson. And oh God, you were saying about Icarus and not getting the twist. Well, and I don't often get twists in things, but right from the beginning, he was saying, oh yeah, it wasn't me, it was the deviants that killed her, nothing to do with me, honest everyone. And I felt that was like a big signpost throughout. Several times he said that. So I am paraphrasing. That is not a direct quote.
I was gonna say, he doesn't say it wasn't me.
Yeah, no, he really does volunteer that right away. He just jumps in with, it was definitely the deviants. Right. Okay, guy.
There's no way she was pushed at all.
No.
Yeah, I think, by the way, one complaint I would have about this, it's funny, this is a kind of movie where sometimes you can feel like a movie that must have had a million rewrites because it was such a dense movie. And The Deviants is a place where I'm like, oh, you can almost feel some tendrils of stuff there, like the character of Crow, the leader of the Deviants. It feels like there was a version of the script where he was going to have a much bigger arc, because there's those things there of like, the Celestials used us both and we're both pawns, but you guys were killing us. So when he shows up in the final fight, for a second, I thought this could be really interesting. When he shows up and sees they're fighting each other, it almost feels like, oh, this could be kind of a cool moment. Like, what does he decide to do? But instead, he just attacks them all. They also fight him. So I was like, well, on one hand, I don't quite agree with some complaints that it's like, oh, the Deviants are weak villains, because they're red herring villains. Like, literally, Icarus's plan at the end is, he says, you would be distracted by the Deviants, so you wouldn't be like paying attention to the immersion. So I don't mind that they're a distraction, but it almost bothers me that they kind of had this one Deviant that they're trying to give some personality to, but don't fully. It just felt like a weird, like a story didn't really go anywhere, that element of it. And I agree with you, Kim. It's like, there are some crazy exposition dumps in this. In fact, this is when I'm going to run to go pee moment, having seen the movie before, was when Arisham is like, here's the deal, Cersei, and has like a 10-minute speech where he's like, lays it all out for her. I'm like, man, I wish there was an easier, a more natural way to do this, but I feel like they felt kind of like, well, again, so many characters, so he's just gonna tell her, he's just gonna say like, here is the actual thing. And so yeah, that I keep going back to that word clunky, because that is the thing I feel. It's like, I think it definitely, I can, obviously the movie worked for me more than it did for you guys. Like, emotionally, it hit me harder, I think, but I also felt this sort of awkwardness to, some of these moments, some of these beats they were going to. We definitely have talked about a little bit, but favorite characters, standout characters, or someone who didn't work for you in the movie particularly.
Yeah, you also mentioned Druig as a standout character, and I agree. I think Barry Keoghan just has this natural charisma that makes him really, really watchable, and he brought a lot to that character. But also, I thought Kit Harington was lovely as the everyman that we can all identify with, but obviously underused in the film. He wasn't in it very much. We'll talk about the post-credits in a bit. But yeah, so Dane Whitman, he was my other favorite.
Mm-hmm. What about for you, Bailey?
Obviously we've talked about Kingo. I thought anytime Kumail was on screen, it sort of was just like, oh, thank God he's back. I loved seeing Angelina Jolie again. I mentioned this already, but like she shows up and you're like, oh wow, yeah, that's a movie star. Okay, all right. Here's a real movie star in this movie, guys. And your focus is just drawn to her. She's amazing.
It's funny. I really respect, I like that she's just part of the ensemble in this movie, while also acknowledging her like movie star charisma can be a little distracting, because it's like, you almost expect like there's going to be some huge twist with her. Why is she just part of the team? But I mean, yes, they give her like a cool moment of killing Crow and all, but she is just part of the team. But I like that, and I thought she was really cool in it. I think we mentioned in passing, but I do want to mention Harish Patel as Kauran, the valet of Kingo.
So
he's really good, and he's like this nice, like humanizing, literally element in this middle of this movie. I also want to say, but I do want to say, I really like Gemma Chan, but I did feel like Cersei. That was one of those cases. Ajax and Cersei both have a similar issue, which is that we find out that Ajax, like you said, like why did Icarus not change his tune when everyone else did? And he's kind of surprised Ajax did, but she has to kind of tell us like, well, when I was around all those years, I saw the bad of humanity, but I saw the good of it. And that's one of those things where it's like, I wish we could have, shown, not told. And I felt a little bit about that with Cersei too. There's a lot of montages of her like connecting with humans, but I felt like I wish I could have felt that a little more, because she's very overtly supposed to be the one who has like the most compassion for humanity. And I got that, but I didn't quite feel it, in the way that I could with some of the other stuff.
She sort of suffers from teen mom syndrome that you sometimes see in superhero movies, where usually the ones where there's just one woman in the cast. So there's a lot of women in this cast, so it's fine, but there's still always like a teen mom who doesn't really get to have fun and just has to be sort of serious and like focused the whole time, which is an important part of a team, but also not the most compelling person to watch. Right. So when she's like the center of the narrative, it feels a little flat. They could have done so much more with her character and made her so interesting, but instead she was just teen mom.
Right. I'll tell you what would have worked well with her is if they'd shown her using the aging app as well. We only saw Icarus as an old
right. Yeah. I did like the runner that she's addicted to her phone, because what's more relatable?
Very relatable.
Pausing for a second, guys, just say thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel for videos every day. Hit that like, hit that bell. Let us dive into something that you referenced a little bit, Kim, which is let's talk about the credit scenes. There are two big ones that have some interesting sort of swerves and debuts. What did you think of them? What did you think of the characters we met in these two credit scenes?
Yeah, I mean, they're both highlights of the film, but that's not unusual with Marvel movies, even in very good Marvel movies. I love the reveal of Eros. What are we calling him? Star Fox?
I think either. He goes by either.
The Fox of the Stars. Sure. He definitely is Harry Styles. And you can probably hear my dog barking in the background.
He's got feelings.
You just trained your dog to bark anytime you say Harry Styles' name out loud.
That's exactly it.
Huge fan.
And of course, Pip the Troll.
Yeah.
Patton Oswalt. What I like about this, I mean, it was quite a fun scene in itself, but that they have ties from the comics to characters that we are just being introduced to, like Kang the Conqueror and Adam Warlock, who we haven't met yet, but we heard about his casting recently. Will Poulter. And Pip has ties to the Silver Surfer. I believe he spent some time trapped in the Soul Stone with in the Soul World with.
We've all been there.
Let me tell you, not fun.
Right.
So I just wonder, it gets the juices flowing. It gets you thinking about what they can do to bring these characters together. I like this connecting of new characters and the opening up of everything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Bailey, what about you?
I am not a big comics person, so the significance of everyone was explained to me by the person that I was watching the movie with. But Harry Styles showed up, and I think my major takeaway was, is that Harry Styles? Like, I wasn't excited to see him. I like Harry Styles. I have no problem with the guy, but he showed up and it felt very like Ed Sheeran in Game of Thrones, where it's just like a moment of, is that pop star Harry Styles here in this movie now? Okay, sure. Fine. And now he's part of it. I thought it was okay. It was fun, which is better than I can say for the rest of the movie. So sure.
My first thought was Dunkirk reunion, because Barry Keoghan and Harry Styles were both in that scene together. But yeah, I thought that was really fun. Honestly, my main pop culture favorite reference for hairstyles is Dunkirk. I mean, obviously I'm aware of him as a popular musician, but I couldn't name one of his songs. But I thought that was, and
you can name a dozen.
And his casting as a character who is very much a ladies' man and literally named Star Fox, is obviously some winking casting there, which I thought was definitely fun. And then you get the final scene, which I know was understandably confusing to some people because of this voice-off camera. I will hype up my article that you can read on the site because I think I might be the only person who had Chloe Zhao confirm that it was who I thought it was, that was Mahershala Ali has Blade. That was the debut of Blade into the MCU in that final scene. So in the moment, it was like, huh. And then once I was like, is that? And then her confirming it. Now I'm like, cool. It's a weird, I don't think anyone would have expected Eternals to be the way Blade is introduced into the MCU. But I do think it's a fun aspect of the connected universe thing, right? It's like, why not the vampire hunter? Now that you guys know that was the voice of Blade at the end, what did you think of that final scene?
Yeah, again, for the same reasons that I gave for the previous scene, it just, and they all, not all, most post-credit sequences, mid-credit sequences do excite us for what's to come. But doing this, if you know that it's Blade when you're watching, it's a real mic drop moment. And, Blade is iconic now as a character, both in comics and on screen. And I think it's a real exciting moment in terms of where the MCU is going to go now and how these two join together, because I don't think they have any comic book history together, do they? I might be wrong. Black Knight.
They have some cursory. They were both in a couple team books. Yeah. I don't think they had like huge storylines, but they were both there in a couple sense. So, but it is funny that they're introducing Blade while he's literally looking at something called the Ebony Blade. So it's just like, we're all in on Blades, guys. Like the MCU and Blades.
Blades all the way down.
Blades all the way down. Bailey, what'd you think of that? The final little the Kit Harington scene, which again, if you don't know the comics, there's a million things that you don't have the connective tissue to like. What's the sword? What's the deal?
I was just amped Kit was back. I was like, cool. We've barely seen him in this movie. Awesome. I'm delighted that he's going to continue being on our screens, warming our hearts with his extremely not Jon Snow accent, which took me a second to get used to. Because I know people aren't their characters, but gosh, they're different accents. I'm excited. Vampires in the MCU, sure, why not? I'm glad we're at the why not point of the MCU where they're just doing stuff now.
Right.
It's like, yes, please do more stuff.
I definitely appreciated, by the way, that they made sure to get like the Robb Stark meet Jon Snow scene. They had to. They're like just the shot of them looking at each other. It's like, got to get them there. By the way, as the biggest defender of this movie here, I will a sort of macro complaint I will have though is it felt weird to me that the cut to closing credits moment was on Kit Harington, was on Dane, and not one of the Eternals, because he gets his own post-credit scene too. So that was just a little strange to me. Like it should have ended with the thing with Cersei or some way to like go out, I felt like, with the Eternals, because suddenly we get going to the credits on Dane and a post-credit scene. So it seems like this huge shift to like this guy,
agreed. It should have ended on Cersei, if anything, or just all of them standing together in a cute little like team photo or whatever.
Maybe they're hedging their bets in case everyone hates this film and they don't want any more Eternals, but we can go with Blade and Dane Whitman.
I'll sort of move around questions here for a second, because you say that I did feel the ending was interesting because they split them all up in a way that was interesting, where it's like, you don't necessarily, and the way the MCU works, I wouldn't necessarily think the next thing we're going to see all these characters in is an Eternals sequel. They could get to that, but you could have those spaceship crew show up in Guardians 3. You could have there's so many different things. Someone could randomly, Hawkeye could need a new weapon from Phastos. I don't know. There's a lot of options. So I guess, are you excited to see, as people who didn't love this movie, are you excited to see these characters again? did it succeed on that level or not yet?
Some of them, but not the ones that I'm supposed to be excited to see again. I don't really want to see Cersei again. But they have teased other Eternals, haven't they, that we haven't met yet? So I'd be open to that.
Bailey, what about you?
Yeah, I think the MCU doesn't really have a shortage of just Deus Ex Machina level superheroes floating around out there, and now they got more. So anytime we need someone to just come in and be powerful for 5 seconds and fix something for the more interesting people that we're seeing the movie about and then leave, I guess we've got them ready to go. Got a whole stable.
I guess this is our biggest divide, guys, because I was legitimately like, and again, I didn't think I would be, but I liked most of these characters by the end, and certainly that trio on the ship, I like them a lot. But I'm getting even Cersei, who I want them to Cersei, like I think I can't remember if I said that I want her to get like her like Taika Waititi takeover moment of like, let's really punch this character up, but I still, all of them I would be excited to see again. I think it was a wise decision to kill 3 of them because they needed to thin that herd. That was too many Eternals.
I just wanted to say that I really felt for Sprite as soon as she was turned human and went to school. I thought she's going to get teased mercilessly about that haircut.
That could be its own Disney Plus show. So
I would watch that. That's like the first thing about Sprite I'm interested in. It's just watching her have to deal with middle school.
I'm pro Sprite. I mean, I was mad at her, but I was into the character. Let me ask, as we near the end of this, this was, the big swing here in there's a few big swings, but one of them was hiring Chloe Zhao to direct it, because the MCU, has, early on they were using sort of established, directors in some realms. Lately, they've been going to like indie film directors, but this was different because yes, she's indie film, but she was on sort of a higher plateau. She was more of an auteur. She was literally coming off, Oscar winning film and her winning an Oscar. As people who didn't love this movie, what did you think of that mix? And do you think going forward, they should sort of try, did it just not work? And is that because of her, or should they try other directors in this kind of odd realm for them, or do you think maybe they shouldn't? Maybe they should go a little more straight down the lane.
I mean, I don't blame Chloe Zhao for the faults of this movie. I think there was a lot that she was working against, and she did the best with what she had. I do wish that they would hire people who maybe were a little bit more excited about fight choreography. Again, like this one really suffers from coming right after Shang-Chi, which has the best fight choreography of any Marvel movie, but the fight scenes were just so uninteresting and flat, and I think you really need someone who can get excited about them, because then the audience can get excited about them.
Yeah, I agree, by the way. Sorry, just that I do agree, by the way. Criticism of mine would also be that the action scenes didn't really pop, that they're just like, there was a couple cool moments, but there was not a lot that really stood out.
It's just such a big part of these superhero movies, and it feels like it's just not the emphasis ever. And that's again why I keep bringing up Shang-Chi, but it was just such a breath of fresh air, because it felt like the first time that they were like, oh yeah, this is a significant part of the movie, maybe we should make it fun and good. And then the Eternals went right back.
I agree with that. The fights were so uninteresting. But I don't blame Chloe Zhao either. And I liked that she tried to bring some warmth and soul searching into the film, but it just didn't work. And I think mainly it didn't work is because there were so many characters to do it with and so much going on. It was such a big story to set that against, that it just didn't really work.
Yeah, I feel like, it might have been best served either as a movie with a very pared down cast, or again, the miniseries version of this. I will say I did like that, because I was talking with a friend of mine and I kind of agreed with him about like Shang-Chi, which, I thought was great, but Shang-Chi, kind of has its most like dramatic climax with the Shang-Chi taking on his father fight, but then there's still some more creature stuff to deal with that isn't quite as engaging, so I did respect the fact that this movie ends with like the Unimind. Like it's literally going for like an intellectual ending versus like we have to take down, like we're not gonna like beat up something. We're all gonna unite. And we're going to turn this thing into a statue, but it's not about like you shoot your laser blast, you do this. And I did like that. It's like a nuanced thing, because I'm not saying it like it nailed it completely, but I think because I was more into the characters than you guys a little bit, like it got me. And by the way, the score also did some heavy lifting there, because it was really good, really good score too. But it did get me on some level there. Any final thoughts, guys, on the Eternals as we wrap things up here?
I've said everything I needed to say. Yeah.
Eternals 2, Eternal Boogaloo. Let's do it.
We have a couple of articles you should check out. Kim, talk about the one you wrote about aliens in regards to the Eternals.
Yeah, so this was not actually written by me, written by one of our very talented journalists, James McMahon, who spoke to an actual real life ufologist. That is a UFO expert.
Alien.
We almost had the alien, and then he dropped out at the last minute.
Tough get.
We have contacts, Bailey. About
first contacts.
Hey, about what it would really be like if aliens visited, and if the scenarios in Eternals and other alien movies bear any resemblance to what might happen in real life, because we know what will happen in real life. No, so it's very interesting, very speculative, but give it a read.
Yeah, it's a really fun article, and I do love that a ufologist is a thing. And then I'll just plug again my article with Chloe Zhao and Kit Harington talking about the blade of it all. I didn't know if they, you never know when you're doing, even though you say in an interview, like this is going to run after with a huge spoiler warning, sometimes they still won't talk about it. But in this case, I got them at the right time. They both talked about it a little bit. So Ryan will put links to both of those in the description. All right, guys, no rest for the weary, no rest for the MCU fans, because I was just thinking about how Hawkeye's like 2 weeks away and the Spider-Man movie is like 4 weeks away. So we'll have plenty more to talk about. But in the meantime, thanks, guys. And we'll have plenty more for you here at Fandom. Bye.